Well, we feared the news that was going to come down on Thursday. It finally happened. Gasser's going to miss the next 12 months with Tommy John surgery. We'll get into that and how the rotation looks going forward on something that we kind of anticipated was going to happen. And the Brewers went out and lost a heartbreaker in San Diego. We'll get to all this coming up next on this edition of Locked On Brewers.
You are Locked On Brewers, your daily Milwaukee Brewers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Man, it's such a long season, 162 games, and you wouldn't think that every game wouldn't matter, but it does. We remember games. Each game is an individual chapter of the season, and we look back, and you could always probably off the top of your head right now recall 10 to 15 at least memorable games. The Brewers had 13 games over the 500 mark, but this one, memorable, not in a good way. In San Diego, they lose 7-6. We'll get to that coming up here in a little bit. Robert Gasser opts for the Tommy John surgery after 3 opinions on the elbow. And how does the rotation look going forward? This is something we anticipated. We'll talk about that. ESPN, ESPN virtually ignores the Milwaukee Brewers. Along with the national media, I talked about how ESPN will not broadcast the Brewers on Sunday Night Baseball. Well, they remembered them on a national note on Thursday night. They're there for the Brewers. The Brewers are there for comedy relief for ESPN on a Thursday night. We'll get to that. They never cease to fail me. Also, we'll talk a little bit about Sal Frelick. Sal Frelick, I put something out about him being used as trade bait. Some of you came at me on tweets. We'll get to all that coming up here on the show in a little bit. Chuck Freeman, you get me on Google, Spotify, Apple, on all the major downloads. Our podcast is Locked On Brewers. Wherever you download your podcasts, hey, we are there. Locked On Brewers, number one Brewer podcast on the internet for a reason, because of you great Brewer fans like me, lifelong Brewer fans. My favorite sport. The Brewers, maybe not your number one favorite team, but hey, that's what you follow in the summer. If you grew up in Wisconsin, most of us, 99.99% of us, are Brewers fans growing up here. We follow the Milwaukee Brewers. We've been through a lot of fun things with them and a lot of heartbreak. Trust me, we've had that. Trying to pull this team to a World Series championship, and it's an honor for me to talk to you guys every day, talk with you guys about the Milwaukee Brewers. And, of course, our growing YouTube page. Search Locked On Brewers on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the bell. That'll alert you every time we drop an episode. Our growing YouTube page. And, of course, hit me up on Twitter. Chuck Freeman, Freimund. All right. We'll start with Robert Gasser. When you go out and get a second or a third opinion on something medically, that usually means you're looking for a better answer. A better answer to the one you have. His second opinion confirmed that he needed elbow surgery, Tommy John surgery, and that's what they're going to go with right now. Gasser said, well, he could have rehabbed it and then maybe down the line have the surgery, but then it would cost him more of a season. He chose to have the surgery right now, which I'm all for that. You never want to have surgery on anybody. You never want to get opened up, no matter if you're driving in a UPS car, truck, or you're a sportscaster or a sales guy or whatever, a ball player, professional athlete. You never want to get opened up. And this is what's going to happen with Gasser. He's going to have the surgery, and we hope everything works out with him, obviously. Now, to what extent of the Tommy John surgery? Obviously, there's different ways that when they go inside the elbow, we'll see when he has the surgery next week as to what extent they had to go in and fix the elbow. So only the surgeon will know, and we'll hopefully get a good report. When these guys go into surgery, these athletes that always say, well, surgery is always successful. It's always successful. It's always successful surgery. But we'll see whether or not Gasser, if he needed just a couple of things repaired in it, if he needed full-on Tommy John surgery. There's different levels, I guess, of it. So we'll find out probably next week when he has the surgery. I believe it's Monday that he has the surgery. But, too bad for him. 5 starts, 2.17 or 2.57 earned run average. I think the Brewers won all but one of his games that he started and looked to be a real, not only a future for the Brewers, but, a guy who is solid for the Brewers going forward. This rotation right now, the way it stands, it's Peralta, Ray, Myers, Wilson, and Rodriguez. If you look at it, some of these guys are, and again, where would they be without Ray and Myers just pitching above what we expected out of them? Myers wasn't even on the 40-man. Ray, pretty much a journeyman pitcher in his career. Myers, for that matter, a journeyman minor leaguer. Bryce Wilson, bullpen guy, converted into a starter, has been doing better than I expected. Now, he gave up 3 home runs. On Thursday night. We're going to get to that a little bit. So Peralta, Ray, Myers, Wilson, your first 4, and then you got Rodriguez coming up in the 5-hole in that rotation. But until the Brewers make an acquisition, if they do, that's what they're going to ride out. It's not exactly a rotation that's going to strike fear in your hearts. Like I said last night on the podcast, if they had Burns or Woodruff or both, man, just how good this rotation. But these guys are holding their own. Now, the pitching did fail them on Thursday night, but the pitching has been so good. Wilson gave up 3 home run balls, 2 homers. He gave up a 3-run bomb to Machado on an 0-2 pitch, and he gave one to Cronenworth on an 0-2 pitch. And it's like, man, those are just killers on 0-2 pitches. Bryce Wilson, 3 home run balls he gave up. He had, and I put this out on Twitter, it kind of reminded me of the Pittsburgh Pirates, Bryce Wilson, what I saw when he was in Pittsburgh. He's come here and he's been great. But I saw a lot of that in Pittsburgh where he was just leaving balls over the plate. 0-2 pitch. Boy, what a sin that is. That is what cost the Brewers this game. Leaving 0-2 pitches over the plate, costing 4 runs in this game. That's what it is right there. Now, even so, the Brewers were down in this game 6-4. They battled back with a 9th-inning rally. Yelich leads off with a walk. Bowers with a RBI single to right. Things are going well. A wild pitch scores a run. And then Rhys Hoskins, who had been 0 for 17 with runners in scoring position and really losing a lot of people's faith in him. Really. A lot of people have been getting down on Hoskins to a point where it's like, why is this guy even playing? And maybe Tyler Black is on this roster he's a left-handed hitter, but he's going to take up some first base spot time maybe over there if he starts hitting. But Rhys Hoskins, 0 for 17, came up with a double over the left fielder's head, and that produced a tying run. Now, they couldn't get him in from second base with 1 out, which you would have liked. They could not score that run, and that was it right there. And then in the bottom of the 9th inning, Payamp strikes out the first 2 hitters, and then Cronenworth hits the second home run of the game, almost in the same spot, right down the right field line. And after Payamp looks dominant in the first 2 batters, gives up a solo home run, and 7-6 the Brewers lose. Man, you tie the game up. You work so hard to tie that game up, and then once again you give up that home run to Payamp. But still, they scored 6 runs. Runners in scoring position, another bad one. And I did question a move late in that game. The Brewers had runners at second and third, I want to say, and Frelick was due up. I'm sorry, bases were loaded. Tying run on second. Down 5-3, I believe, at that point. 5-3, bases loaded. Frelick was due up, the left-handed hitter, and they pinch hit Sanchez, and it was good morning, good afternoon, good night. Struck out on 3 pitches. And I said at the time, and of course, hindsight is always 20/20, but I was looking back and I was like, man, if Frelick is part of your future, okay, I want Frelick, who's in the game. I know it's against a left-handed hitter, but thinking that Frelick is going to come through and deliver maybe a bloop for a base hit or a line drive or a bleeder through the hole or a base hit, score 2 runs. I don't need Sanchez going up there swinging for the fences, hitting me a bomb at that. Sure, he'll take it at that point if he does, but I'm not looking for the bomb. I'm not looking for the grand slam or the triple into the corner. Well, Sanchez probably a double into the corner, but I'm just looking for a 2-run single to get that thing back to even. I would have stuck with Frelick. Frelick's been in the game. You got Sanchez coming into this game cold, facing the left-hander though, and he strikes out. They got him to face the left-handed hitter. They're going by the book right there. I don't always like the book. This lefty-righties thing. I don't always buy into that, to be honest with you. I don't buy into that. I know sometimes the percentages, a lot of times percentages are on that lefty-righty thing, I go a quality hitter. And nothing against my guy, Gary Sanchez, but Frelick, I'd like to see him get in a bad situation. If Frelick is going to be a primetime player like we think he's going to be, and an everyday guy, put him in the lineup and let him hit against a left-hander in that situation. If Frelick is part of our future, and they talk so highly of Frelick, what are we doing pinch hitting for him? Okay? We're pinch hitting for Christian Yelich back in 2018. All right? We're pinch hitting for other future stars. If we think that Sal Frelick is a future star, what are we doing pinch hitting for him? What are we doing? I don't remember Yount, Molitor, Ben Oglivie, Cecil Cooper, Greg Vaughn, young guys who came up in the Brewers system. I'm just naming a couple of guys. Well, Cooper didn't, but I mean, he was a solid left-hand hitter. They brought a left-handed pitcher. They weren't pulling Cecil Cooper out of the game. I don't know. I think we go too much with this lefty-righty thing. And if Sanchez hits the home run, I'm probably still talking about it here because I just don't. You all know I do not like that lefty-righty. I think we go too much in that percentage things. And I think at the end of the day, I want to go with the best available player. Sal Frelick, son, get up at the plate, bases loaded, and I'll go down with a guy who's one of my top prospects. I'll go down with him because he's delivered. And if you notice in the past, Frelick got away a punch, smart ball player punching one through a hole, punching one in a gap. When the shift was allowed last year, that guy was so good at fighting the shift holes and all that. So I'll take my chances. And Sanchez is going for the downs right there. Sitting on the bench for 5 or 6 innings, I would rather take my chances with Frelick. I know people came at me on Twitter on that righty-lefty thing. You all want to live and die by it, but I refuse to. All right, Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Good to have you along. You get us on Google, Spotify, Apple, on all the major downloads. And the show is brought to you in part by Stitch Fix. Hey, you know what? That's where I get my clothes. What happens with Stitch Fix? You get a stylist who understands your style, size, and budget, and they'll do all the shopping for you. It's the easiest way to update your wardrobe this season or into the fall season, winter season, whatever. I give my stylist the size, style, and budget preferences. I order the boxes when I want and how I want them, and there's no subscription. They send 5 pieces of clothing for me just recommendations for me based on what I ask for. They give their recommendations. They're professional stylists. I keep what works and send back the rest. Style, remember, look good, feel good, work good. Something like that is how it goes. But man, if you dress good, you have a great productive day at work or on the golf course or whatever you need. Now's the best time to get started at StitchFix.com. StitchFix.com/MLB gets you $100 off. That's $25 off your first 4 fixes for a limited time only. Again, StitchFix.com/MLB, $100. That's $25 off your first 4 fixes for a limited time. StitchFix.com. And I'm Chuck Freeman here. Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Heading into a Friday, game 2 of that series with the San Diego Padres. Another late one, 8:40 with the approximate first pitch. You get on Sirius XM, the SXM app. Brewers and Padres, you get all 162. You get every Brewers game, every baseball game on Sirius XM and the SXM app. Again, you just got to search Brewers, and it's all right there for you. All right. Willy Adames, he's hitting 245. He's got the 13 home runs or so. And, this old baseball problem is we can't keep the guys he wasn't homegrown, but I feel like Adames almost was. He's been here since 2021. He's been here for a while after starting his career in Tampa. But we can't keep him. We can't keep him. Why? Because of the way the system is in Major League Baseball. NBA, we'd be able to keep a guy like Willy Adames. NFL, we'd be able to keep a guy like Willy Adames. But in Major League Baseball, we can't. So we can only keep these guys through. We've seen it with Prince Fielder and a few other guys. that we've only been able to keep these guys until they start hitting their peak, 4th, 5th year. And by that time, that 6 years is gone. If we haven't traded them, like a Corbin Burnes, they're off. They're off joining free agency. Gosh, I just can't stand it. I don't understand why the Players Association, Major League Baseball, the Players Association looks at it and they see all the money. They get greed and they see all the money. They don't want to be restricted with salary caps and such. But man, Major League Baseball, 30 years ago, they had a chance to stand up to it and they wimped out on it. And as a result, here we are. We can't keep a guy like Willy Adames. We're going to lose him to free agency. I wish we could keep him. Man, I would love for, a veteran like that. It's like the Brewers have to pick and choose what veterans they're going to keep. Ryan Braun, they chose to keep. Prince Fielder, they didn't choose to keep. Christian Yelich, they choose to keep. Corbin Burnes, they don't choose to keep. Brandon Woodruff, they weren't going to keep him either. But now they're getting him back at a reduction because of this of the injury, the shoulder injury. So that's the only reason why Woodruff is here. Woodruff would be pitching for another team, making $200 million a year, or not a year, but on his contract, $150, $200 million or something like that. But that injury, he wouldn't get any offers there, so he's back here. But God, I'm just sick of growing these players and having to do what you have to do with Cheerio. You got to sign him to this contract. You got to invent ways just so you don't lose these players to free agency. And Willy Adames, every time I see him come to the plate, I think, and he hit another home run, got the Brewers back into the ball game, had a 2-run shot to get the Brewers within 1 on Thursday night. When I see him come to the plate, I'm thinking to myself, yeah, he's only on borrowed time here. Yeah, Willy Adames. Don't be getting myself a Willy Adames. Don't get too excited about Willy Adames because he's not here for a long time. He's here for a short time, producing and helping himself get a bigger contract, helping the Brewers as well. But man, I'd love to see Adames in a perfect world. If we can give this guy a big contract and to keep him here, I would love to see that. Love to see Willy Adames to be my franchise shortstop going forward. Would love it. Yeah. After a disappointing year last year, Adames, to me, is the real deal. And Mr. Clutch, look at that guy, late innings, coming up with home run balls. Man, I wish we could keep Willy Adames. It's just sad that we can't. I just do not like those baseball rules. And unfortunately, it's never going to change. It's never going to change. But man, Adames, going forward, imagine keeping him at shortstop for the next 5 to 10, 15 years at shortstop. Not 15 years, but at least the next 10 years, have him at shortstop. Terang, being able to keep him. All these guys we're going to have to make decisions on, down the road. Eventually, that credit card payment is going to come due on all those guys. We could watch Terang and Frelick if he's here. We could watch him mature and all that, knowing that, hey, eventually, the more production, the better they get, the more chances that they're not coming back. They're not here for a long time with the Milwaukee Brewers. That some other team is going to pick them up. It's happened to other guys, and before we see Corbin Burnes with Baltimore. Maybe they re-sign him, but he's going to get a big deal. Gosh, another homegrown guy. Imagine if we were able to re-sign Corbin Burnes. It's just ridiculous, and that's exactly why baseball's in the shape it is sometimes. So top heavy with the major markets. All right. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. When we return, I'll address Sal Frelick on him getting traded, on using him as trade bait. Some of you are interested in that. We'll get to that coming up here in a little bit. Look ahead to Friday's game 2 against San Diego. All that coming up next here on Locked On Brewers. Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. And here at Locked On Brewers, we pride on giving you guys all the Brewers news and giving you news and commentary regarding the team year-round. You know what else is year-round? Collection season. Just because tax season is over doesn't mean the IRS will stop coming after you for unfiled taxes. The IRS can garnish your wages, levy your bank accounts, and even seize your property. Don't let the IRS target you. Get the licensed professionals and tax experts at Tax Network USA. go to bat for you. They got over 14 years experience, an A+ rating by the Better Business Bureau. Tax Network USA has saved their clients over $1 billion in tax debt. Whether you owe taxes, have complicated matters that require tax planning, or finally hit that parlay this season and need the correct filing papers, they can help you out. Call 1-800-549-1000, 1-800-549-1000. Visit tnusa.com/locked on, or you see that link that's on my episode on YouTube. Click that link right below if you're watching me on YouTube, and that'll take you in the direction that you want to go. Again, visit tnusa.com/locked on for the Tax Network USA. Chuck Freeman down the home stretch here on Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day, late nighters. Well, we're getting a lot of people watching us late night on our YouTube channel, staying up and watching our coverage here of the Milwaukee Brewers with all these West Coast teams. And another one coming up on Friday night. Hopefully you don't have to work on Monday morning, or on, I should say on Saturday morning. You got Colin Ray on the hill. Dylan Cease, we all know how tough he is. Dylan Cease on the hill for the Padres. He's 6-6 on the year. Colin Ray hopefully gives them a good one on Friday night. Some of you came after me about what I said about Sal Frelick. It's not that I want to trade Sal Frelick. It's that he's of their outfield commodity. He's their most attractive one. Okay, I'm saying if you want to go out and get yourself a huge piece, Blake Perkins isn't going to draw anybody. Blake Perkins, if you threw Blake Perkins in on a tree, you called up the Angels and say, well, we'd like Tyler Anderson. Here's Blake Perkins. They'd hang up you hear a dial tone. They'd hang up the phone on you. But if you added the Sal Frelick in a package and one of your prominent guys, now you got something there. And that's what I'm saying. If you're going to trade, you're going to make a trade and get a top level player who's being put out there by a non-contending team. You're going to have to put something out there like a Sal Frelick. That's all I'm saying. Do I want to trade him? Of course not. Yeah, do they have a crowded outfield out there in center and right field with Mitchell coming back? Of course they are. Do I want to trade Frelick? No. I always feel like the crowded outfield situation always tends to work itself out. I get it all the time. People say, what happens when Mitchell comes back? What's going to happen to the outfield? Who's going to play center? Who's going to be right? It always works each other out, right? It does. It's like when the Brewers got Moustakas in 2018. Where are they going to find at-bats for Travis Shaw? They moved over to second base. They find ways to get at-bats for guys. But yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm not against Sal Frelick. Saw a guy tell me he was going on friendly and never listened to me again because I said they should trade Sal Frelick. No, I said if you want one of those big chips out there, you're going to have to give up something. And the biggest chip would be Sal Frelick because you're not trading Christian Yelich. You're certainly not trading Jackson Chourio. Perkins you couldn't get much for. Mitchell's coming back hurt. Bowers, you're not going to trade him. I mean, there's nothing. He doesn't have a heck of a lot of trade value out there. I mean, Brewers got him off the street, but like I said, Sal Frelick would be your best choice. ESPN. I want to finish with this. ESPN, on the national networks, they ignore the Milwaukee Brewers, and I've said this. I'm not going to go on my tangent, but sure enough, sure as heck, I get an alert from them tonight, right on my phone. Oh, Milwaukee Brewers. And of course, you know what it is? Christian Yelich losing that ball on the lights. If you didn't see the game, there was a ball hit out the left center field. Yelich lost it in the lights at Petco Park, and it went by him, and a run scored to make it a 6-3 game at that point, and a big run in that. So I get the alert from ESPN. Oh, how funny. Let's see Christian Yelich battling the lights. Yeah, real good. You never get when Christian Yelich hits the game-winning home run or somebody from the Brewers goes Yahtzee there, or I get the morning email, nothing on that. But sure, when a Brewer to provide some comedy relief, I guess the Brewers are there for comedy relief for ESPN. Just an absolute joke. National networks don't want to pay attention to the Brewers unless they're providing comedy relief. The Brewers are. Glad we're able to do that. Gosh, this bothers me. Sorry, that's just a big thing for me, that the lack of respect a team like the Milwaukee Brewers gets on a national basis. Even when they win the division titles in the last couple of years, there are teams of lesser quality, lesser standards who get more attention than the Milwaukee Brewers. But, hey, get a ball on the lights, and you're going to get on ESPN every time if you're the Milwaukee Brewers. All right, the Brewers lead now in the division, 6.5 on St. Louis, 7.5 on Pittsburgh, 8 on Cincinnati, or 8 on the Cubs, 8.5 on Cincinnati in the overnight hours. That's going to do it for me. Chuck Freeman. Again, you get us on Google, Spotify, Apple, on all the major downloads. Hit us up on Twitter, Chuck Freeman, FREIMUND. And please, our growing YouTube page. Go to YouTube, search Locked On Brewers, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell. That'll alert you every time we drop an episode on Locked On Brewers. Otherwise, we'll see you coming up late Sunday night following this 4-game set. Game 2 coming up on Friday night from Petco. Brewers will have Colin Ray on the hill. And again, 8:35, 8:40. Make that. You get it on Sirius XM and the SXM app. Search Brewers, and you'll get all 162 of Brewers baseball. Till we see you on Sunday night. Good luck, everybody, and have yourself a great weekend. Enjoy the Wisconsin weekend. This is Chuck Freeman, Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day.